Hello, sir. How are
Hi,
you
sir.
doing?
Oh, fantastic. I am just eagerly waiting for this year to end, I would say.
So, what
So,
makes you think next year will be better than this?
it is all on hopes. But
Okay.
I have always hoped that the next year will bring something good than the previous year.
Okay.
So, after all the agonies and unfortunate moments faced this year, I truly hope that the next year rings in with a lot of hope for all of us. And we start positively from January 1st and
Okay.
go on.
Nice, sir. So, today I just wanted to actually discuss with you something that are related to traffic and no related topics like road rage and all those stuffs,
Oh, that's very
compliance to
interesting.
law, and so I just wanted to
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
discuss on those topics.
No, it's really interesting. I think it's a very good decision that you have made to choose that topic because that is something which really needs to be dwelt upon and dealt upon. So it's
Right.
quite a good topic, quite interesting.
Okay. So, before we take a deep dive into this today's topic, sir.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think since how long have you been? Right, you have very illustrious, history with the road and especially two wheelers, as I know. So can you
Yes.
briefly describe how your journey has been from start to today?
Yes, very interesting question, and thanks for giving me an opportunity to do that. My first association with the bike was way back 30 years ago when I started showing some interest from migrating on from a cycle to a motorized vehicle. So, of course, as the history goes, that no one gets up without a fall. So, when I tried my first stint on the bike, I had a fall, and from there on, the fall motivated me to move ahead. My first bike in possession was a moped, way back in 1990s, I would say, early 90s, when I started to drive. And that first opportunity where I went all alone driving a two wheeler was one of the most majestic moments, I would say, as it was equally a moment to think about, as well as a moment to really worry a little bit, because that was the first instance. But I really enjoyed that. As there was no confidence, or there was nothing like that. But I just said, let me just try. I mean, trial costs no error. So from then on, I started and then migrated slowly into confidence, and as well as changed my vehicles, went on to a geared vehicle, and it's been good so far. It's been a good experience. I wouldn't say, as years went past, I wouldn't say that it was a pleasant experience or anything, because thanks to the chaotic traffic which prevails in Bangalore, though I have got an experience of riding a two wheeler now for almost 25-30 years, but I consider still myself as a beginner, or the circumstances make me feel that I am still a beginner, where I need to learn a lot. And with the changing traffic rules every now and then, yes, I need to learn a lot. So, but it's been pleasant, as well as it's been a little bit of a challenge. I would put it that way.
So I assume you started right at the age of 18 itself. You went for a license and just without wasting any time.
Yes, almost, yes. Almost at the age of 18, I took my first step into this. And initially, that facing the learner's license test, those days there would be tests even for getting a learning license. So, you had to be thorough with all those traffic signs, and you had to be thorough with the traffic signals and all those things. So, it was a fun learning experience then. And from then it graduated and it went on, and rules changed and everything. But nowadays, I understand the system is a bit more easier, but then still you need to be thorough with all those traffic rules for your own good, if not the rules demanding it. So yes, it's been that way.
So a challenging question for you now.
Absolutely.
So can you actually recollect your bikes in order till date, starting from the first one, brand and model, if you can?
Oh, definitely. Why not? I think.
I want to see how passionate you are about motoring.
Absolutely,
From that
absolutely.
perspective.
Sure. My first vehicle was a Kinetic Spark, which I bought when I was just graduating out of college into my first work atmosphere. The next vehicle which I changed from Kinetic Spark was a Hero Puck
Okay.
from Hero Motors, because it looked a little bit more organized, and it looked a little bit more, a newer generation vehicle then. So I bought that. And then after finishing my lives with mopeds, I thought, why not graduate into the next step? So went on to a two-stroke geared vehicle, which was Samurai,
Suzuki Samurai.
Suzuki Samurai,
Okay.
which I used for about 3 to 4 years. After that, my passion increased, and then I stayed on with Suzuki and bought a Fiero,
Okay.
a Suzuki Fiero, which was there for a long time with me. And then now from Suzuki, I migrated on to a Honda vehicle, and where I am now driving a Honda Passion for the last 10 years. And one thing in common while I bought all these vehicles was the presence of one of my very best friends, I would say, who has
Okay.
lent a helping hand all through. I mean, whenever it's been a practice for me. Like whenever I go on to purchase a new vehicle or something like that,
Right.
I always go along with him.
Okay.
Because otherwise I feel the job is half done. So thanks very much to him.
Oh, good stuff. Nice. So, getting a little bit of an after the warm up. So, I just
Absolutely.
wanted to
Yes,
take a deeper dive.
no problem.
So, you say that you have been a user of the roads for almost 30 years now,
Yes.
3 decades or
Yes.
more, maybe.
Yes.
So, how would you summarize your experience in a few sentences, if I would ask you to? Actually, was it largely positive or largely negative experience? How would you summarize basically your
Um,
30 years of road usage?
I would say it's been a learning experience. I would say it's been a learning experience because it's been a mix of negative as well as positive. Because I have also faced some unfortunate moments where I had to face short accidents in my life. I remember once when I was driving to my college. I mean, I was on the right track and I was driving at the normal speed when a vehicle came from behind and hit me, and he just sped away. So fortunately I had a fall, but nothing really happened to me, but the rear indicators of the bike, they broke. So that was one of the negative instances which I faced. That way I had to face certain things like that, and yes, it's been largely a mix of positive and negative, I would say, where it has been a learning experience. And yes, life just went on after that.
Okay. So, that's the only incident.
As far as I recollect, yes,
So, otherwise,
that was-
largely it has been a peaceful journey so far.
Yes, I mean, one or two of the similar sorts I had, like not a very nasty accident as such, but of course, I did have a nasty accident, but not with a two-wheeler. I mean, way back when I was in Pune in my year 8, where I was studying in school. So that was the time, when unfortunately one day I was driving my cycle and I was going towards the main entry gate of our colony. Well, unfortunately, one of our very close colony mates, he was coming from the opposite direction. But I'm not sure how the what really caused the collision. It was a very severe collision, and I had a severe injury in my groin area, and it had to be really attended to in such a short situation that otherwise it could have led to very fatal results. Well, that was one of the serious incidences which I recollect from my childhood that happened. But yes, that was way back in Pune. But as far as the two-wheelers here goes, I mean, so far it's been all right. I hope it stays that way.
So, how would you, what percentage of your road usage is within the city, and how much is long, sir? If you want to summarize totally.
Yes, I mean, like I would say around 80% of my usage of my vehicle is more within the city,
Okay.
and only around 20% I drive long.
Okay.
So I haven't really gone too long distances. Of course, I have driven to Banerghatta, the national park, and on the new airport road, I have driven about 20-30 kilometers that side. So, I mean, apart from that, I mean, unless there is a real need, I do not normally wish to drive long on a two-wheeler. Otherwise, it's just been roaming around the city.
So generally you limit yourself to a 50 kilometer radius. Max.
Yes, almost, yes. Up to around that.
Okay.
Yes.
So how do you find your co-users of the roads, or other two-wheeler users in general, in Bangalore? How do what would you think? What are your thoughts on the other two-wheeler people who use the road along with you?
Uh,
Are they like how do you find them actually? What like, are they too aggressive, rude, or like, over a period of time, have you seen any change in behavior, or how is it? Can you summarize that?
Yes, I have. I mean, it's a very good question which I really wanted to throw some light upon. But as time went by and as years went by, I have seen the other road users, change. I mean, they have not been as accommodative as they would have been some 20-30 years ago. This time you feel as if even if you are in the safe ends through your own careful ways or anything like that, but you are always at a risk due to what can happen to you due to the failure of the other riders. So I would always say that the other riders need to be a bit more cautious about what they are doing and where they are doing, and how much of a harm they can cause to the fellow riders if they are not following the way or following the rules. But I do feel that co-riders these days, they are not accommodative at all, because I have had a couple of experiences where two-wheeler riders themselves have just suddenly come while I was driving, or they have just whizzed past or something like that, which is not really a good thing to do. As road users and as responsible road users, I would always expect them to follow certain ethics of driving, so that you also drive peacefully and let the others also drive peacefully. But to summarize my experiences about fellow road users, they have not been polite. They've always been challenging.
And generally, what has your observation been with regard to their compliance with laws, or compliance to law, like wearing of helmet or following the traffic rules? Generally, how do you find it?
It's been absolutely poor, because road rules are made to be followed, and road rules are made with certain amount of sense in mind, I would say, because it's for all to follow. It's for their own safety. I mean, people might say that there could be seasonal effects on health if you wear a helmet, or if it's a scorching 40-degree heat or something, if you wear a helmet and all, and you might sweat, and that might affect your health. But if you look at a larger perspective, if you were without a helmet, then how serious that moment could be if you unfortunately face a challenging circumstance. Because accidents don't come with prior information; they can happen anytime. So I feel that generally two-wheeler riders, they are definitely not following the rules. Helmet is I think off late I never see people wearing any helmets at all, and not to that, where a two-wheeler can carry 3 people, they drive with 4 or 5 or as a family on the bikes, which I have noticed, which again is very, very wrong. So I mean, I would always wish that common sense prevails on them, because this is basic common sense, that they follow the rules and see that they are also safe and others are also safe.
How do you find four-wheeler users or co-users of the road? Are they any different from the two-wheeler guys, or do you have any thoughts on that?
my experience of driving a four-wheeler hasn't been great because
No, I mean when you use the road as a two-wheeler user,
okay, you mean
when others
how
are in the car,
four-wheelers
like
behave.
four-wheeler case, are they any different or are they better?
I would say they are much better than two-wheelers because I mean four-wheelers generally what happens is they do stick to their lane as much as I have seen. But I have rarely seen anybody cutting a road like a four-wheeler, a car, or something just coming and just trying to whiz past before you or anything. That has rarely happened in my case at least. But they are more organized as compared to two-wheelers for sure, according to me.
You have toured some foreign countries.
Yes.
So let's take Dubai.
Yeah.
So how would you compare the Dubai roads and you say road users compared to Bangalore, sir?
I mean, the comparison is too far because you can never really compare Dubai and India as far as following road rules goes because those roads are so perfect. I mean, they are flawless roads and you will rarely find any potholes there. And there, people are initially educated in such a way that they need to follow all rules which are governing them or set up by the government of that particular country. So there is a voluminous difference anywhere for that matter in the Western countries or in the Gulf countries compared to here. And India needs to learn a lot still. I mean, there are a lot of education systems in place which can motivate you to, mold yourself to that degree. But even though it may not be impossible, I do feel it's a sure shot challenge. Comparison is too vast. I mean, you can never compare the rules being followed here to the rules being followed there.
Sir, speaking of potholes,
Yes.
there is one argument in favor of potholes.
Yes.
Is that they form naturally.
Right.
In the sense, somebody lays a road and due to some design aspect or quality aspect of the road, due to weathering, the influence of weather, the road pothole forms. Yeah, mostly it opens up during rainy season.
Right.
That's our experience for many years now.
Right.
On the other hand, the humps are there, no? Speed breakers, as they call. Those are man-made, specifically, purposely put in a place. And we have known that in Bangalore at least,
Right.
Many deaths have happened due to badly designed or placed humps.
Right.
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 So, do you think humps really work or is it a nonsense solution? What do you think? Because we are coming from an age where there was no humps. Humps has been a recent 30 years back kind of development.
Yes.
So how do you view the development of implementing humps?
I would say the road humps have definitely been a good suggestion by whoever has suggested for them to be implemented on roads. But at the same time, I always have seen that they are not followed or they are not complied with at all by people. Because road humps have been laid generally to serve as a speed breaker. Generally, when you come across something like an educational institution or a hospital or something like that, road humps are laid with a view in mind that you should slow down because either people will be crossing or patients would be transferred from this place to that place. And why only public roads outside? Even approach roads within a hospital, I have found to my utter dismay that even road humps laid there are not at all complied with. For example, if you have an emergency ward here and if you have a normal general ward here, and there is a road hump there where even people travel. There too, I have having been worked in hospitals sometime in my career, I have seen that even people, they overspeed there also, completely ignoring the rule there. So I feel road humps, though they were laid with a purpose in mind, they are definitely not serving the purpose as of now. And the blame completely is on the users because they never care to slow down, they never care to follow or even understand the reason behind laying a road hump. So I think it's just become another hindrance to road users, according to me, because I too have found people just while I was following a road hump, people behind have just breezed past me as if it doesn't apply to them at all. So I don't think road humps are really helpful these days. And another thing is, road humps are not marked with the zebra crossing or the white lanes. I mean, even if they are marked, they are so light that it is not at all visible even during the daytime, leave alone nights. So that adds to the agony. So I feel that road humps are really not serving the purpose. And another thing to just extend, these days the roads in Bangalore or even generally are dug up for so many reasons, laying a cable or laying a water pipeline or something like that. But after the work is done, the finishing is so pathetic that unfortunately that particular area turns itself into a road hump. I would call it more as a bone breaker rather than a speed breaker. So I am really unhappy to say that they are not serving any purpose these days.
Okay. So we have seen that more and more women have started using the roads
Yes.
nowadays, both in two-wheeler and four-wheeler.
Yes.
So what's your thoughts, observations on how they are doing? Are they behaving almost same as men, or are they slightly better off? More courteous or more kind? What are your thoughts? Are they more compliant to the law? Are they they don't overtake from the left, or they don't do overspeeding, they don't jump signals, they wear helmets and all blah blah blah, so on and so forth. What are your observations on these points?
Yes, I have seen both the faces of this happen before me, because I have seen elderly women who have been safe drivers, and they have been complying with all the laws and rules and everything, and they drive, they keep up to themselves, and they don't really come in the way of others. At the same time, I have also seen younger women, reasons could be many. It could be hot blood or anything like that, still trying to either behave uninformed or about what rules are to be followed. So I have seen them traveling 2 or 3 or even 4 people in a vehicle, which unfortunately is not a good precedent to set, because irrespective of whoever you are, I think the basic discipline is to follow road rules, and much before you follow, you should understand why they are laid down and what is the benefit. And at any age, whatever you are, you should learn to be careful first than being vibrant or arrogant. So in which way I have found a marginal difference, but as I said, the senior people have stuck to their task, experience behind them, but the generations to follow need to learn a lot.
So a related question again, sir.
Yeah.
So you see that in the city, cops keep catching people
Yes.
for various violations.
Yes.
All over the place.
Yes.
But would you concur with the general observation that females are caught less than men by the cops?
I wouldn't say less, but
For example, if you see a male and a female violating the same rule of not wearing helmet, the probability of the male getting caught is much more than the probability of the female getting caught by a cop. Have you observed or come across this correlation?
I have observed this, yes, because I have had a couple of instances where I have seen 2 people violating a traffic law and only a male getting caught and a female being allowed to pass through. Or I've seen once or twice, but I really cannot. If you ask me, I really cannot. Find a reason as to why this would happen, because irrespective of whoever you are, the rules should be same for everyone. But if this continues to happen, then it is not a very great example, because ultimately everyone should be safe, and causes for accidents, the source can be anyone. I have seen couple of such instances, but I truly and surely wish that law is common to all, and people follow the rules collectively.
What's your take on drunken driving, sir?
It's one of the most horrible things to happen. Believe me, because drunken driving is one of the worst offenses which anybody can think about. The thing is, you're not only putting yourself into trouble, but you're also putting the many road users or pedestrians in specific into trouble. God forbid you lose control on your vehicle and 10 people come before you, and tomorrow all of them face any fatal consequences. So 10 lives are lost because of your stupidity. So even if you would like to drink, I would strongly suggest that you don't drive. So have a driver or have someone else with you who doesn't have the habit of drinking or who is not going to drink that particular day, so that at least you are safe and the others are also safe. Drunken driving, and I have also heard that there are some very strict fines which is being imposed by the traffic police department on drunken driving. But I would say that things like drinking driving should not be let go only through a fine. They should permanently confiscate the vehicle and the license and see to it that those people don't get a chance to drive again in their life at all. So that would be my suggestion. That I have also heard that for a certain period of time your license will be confiscated, and again after certain times you can come back and get it back. But there should not be any such case, because such a horrible offense needs to be dealt with very, very strictly. And drunken driving, the best thing is confiscate your vehicle, confiscate your license, and see that you don't drive anywhere in the world, not only in India, anywhere in the world. That should be a black mark on your career.
Sir, how do you view violence on cops? Several of the people nowadays,
Yes.
when they're caught by the cops for some violation,
Right.
they behave very rudely with the cops.
Yes.
What's your thought on this?
I would say it's not a good reaction from the public in general. Cops might catch you for various reasons, but at the same time, they are also human beings, and they are also serving the people. But however rude the cop may be, you are always setting an example, or you are going to set an example for the people to follow with your own reaction and behavior. If you also manhandle a cop, then what is the difference between you and the cop? So
Actually, there are instances where the cop has been very kind, but yet he is manhandled by the person who is been caught.
Right.
That kind of behavior is what.
That I totally disagree, because to be very frank,
Probably there is some powerful person behind them. They want to show off that.
every
or probably
possibility.
they are.
Yes, I agree with you. Every possibility, because there could be
Probably a guy is a lawyer. Generally,
yes.
we see lawyers are very non-compliant.
Yes, and there could be a remote control device which is happening from behind, which is working from behind.
So, do you think that kind of arrogance is should be allowed, or?
No, it should not be allowed. And another thing is, to be frank, that in today's life, you really and rarely find good cops on the road. So if you come across one, you can take him to be your good friend. And rather than behaving in an inhumanly way, if you support the system to help yourself, you can help the system to serve you better. So I would feel that manhandling a cop or manhandling any gentleman for that matter who is serving the public in general should be totally avoided. It's not a good sign at all.
Okay, so there's one question related to the cops when it comes to catching people.
Yes.
See, we know the riding without helmet is a offense.
Yeah.
Okay, that is that is one scenario. Second scenario, even like driving a car without wearing a belt, they all come under one category.
Right.
And then this black smoke emission.
Yes.
It's
Pollution.
actually court-free offense actually.
Right.
That means even the cops, you have to go in front of the court and appear in front of the judge and then pay the fine.
Right.
Plead guilty, pay the fine, and then come.
Right.
I mean, get your vehicle released.
Yes.
Vehicle is seized. That is the law.
Right.
But when we see in our day-to-day life, the cops keep catching people for two-wheeler offense and not wearing belt, mask, and all the stuff. On the other hand, the black smoke emitting vehicles are let go. There's a blind eye towards it. I mean, what do you think is the rationale behind this?
I would say the approach by the cops in this sector should surely change, because emission of black smoke is a much more dangerous offense than, I would say, not wearing a seat belt. Pardon me if I am wrong or something like that, but I don't want to really place not wearing a seat belt in any lesser quantum or anything. But emission of black smoke, if many would not know, it's a sure short source of cancer. And I have always seen that vehicles generally belonging to the municipality or the other sectors, where they really fail to get their vehicles even tested for fitness at the right point of time for reasons better known to them, and ultimately it turns out to be so toxic that it leads to environmental pollution. So I would say cops should give a very strict attention to something like black smoke emission, because if they put themselves in a normal citizen's position, even they are going to suffer. It is not only the others. I mean, if I was a cop, if I would stand before a vehicle which is emitting a thunderous black smoke or anything like that, I mean, there could be every possibility that after certain years I might contract certain dangerous disease. So if they put themselves in a citizen's shoes and try to analyze, and probably I feel that they should equally address situations which are troublesome to people in general. So black smoke emission should be severely dealt with. There is no two thoughts about it.
Okay. So now I would like to narrate one incident in 3 stages.
Yes.
And want to get your reaction for that.
Absolutely, no problem.
So it is sometime in the month of May when
Right.
lockdown was in progress. It was around 10 o'clock in the night when I was just taking a stroll in just near my front of my house.
Right.
I was taking a call. I was actually calling, talking to some of my cousins.
Right.
So at that time, actually, I witnessed one incident. That is what I want to tell you or describe to you in let's say 3 stages or whatever.
Sure, no problem.
And then we can get your reaction on that.
Right, okay.
So the place is pretty deserted. It's 10 p.m. in the night, and we are in the junction where the 5th Main meets 8th Cross. That is the New India Travels office was there earlier.
Right.
That is the junction.
Right,
So a collision happens between a car and a two-wheeler,
right,
and the car guy gets away.
right.
This is the first level of revelation I want to give you, description.
Okay, collision, okay.
So, I mean, what are your first thoughts? Suppose you are witnessing this kind of a thing.
Right.
What would be your first thoughts? How do you
My
assess the situation?
No, I mean, it's definitely wrong on the portion. I mean, on the part of the car guy to speed away without even stopping and trying to find out what has happened to the two-wheeler. I mean, generally, I have seen situations where a smaller volume vehicle is always held responsible, even if it is involved with a collision with a bigger volume vehicle. I am referring to size. So, for example, if a cycle comes in between an auto, even if the mistake lands with the auto driver, the cycle man is blamed. So, taking that into consideration, I would say that the first and foremost responsibility of the car owner should have been to stop there, find out what would have happened, assess the situation, and find out if he needs any help, and try to address that rather than speeding away as if it is none of his business. So I feel that is a very wrong decision on his part to speed away.
Very interesting, sir, because this is the assumption which people make. Whenever you describe a car and a two-wheeler collided,
Yes.
they assume that the car guy hit the two-wheeler.
Yes.
That's a wrong assumption first. But that is a trap. It's a mental trap. It's a bias against car owners. I want to actually expose this in today's call, our discussion.
Mm-hmm.
That is why I first gave you a very high level picture.
Ah, okay. Right.
See, now I'll give you the next little more detail I'll expose to you.
Absolutely.
Car is coming in 5th main from south to north,
Right.
and the two-wheeler is coming from west to east in the 8th cross.
Right. Huh.
And it is a two-wheeler guy who hit the car.
Huh.
The car actually passed,
Huh.
and the two-wheeler guy hit the car's back wheel and collapsed.
Okay, the two-wheeler fell down.
Two-wheeler guy was the
Right,
one
fell
who
down.
came and hit the car and then fell down.
Okay. Huh.
Car guy, then he stopped for a second and then he pushed off. He went away.
Huh.
So now you tell me, I mean, given this new set of details, who do you think is to blame?
I mean, it's one way to look at it is that probably if the two-wheeler guy was overspeeding from whichever direction he came, and the car guy was at his normal speed, though both of them would have joined at the same intersection, and the time was too short for the two-wheeler guy to even control himself, knowing fully well that he was overspeeding, then I would 100% hold the two-wheeler guy responsible, not the car guy. But and again, in this particular scenario, I would appreciate the car guy who at least tried to stop for some time, but he went away. The reason for him to go away, what according to me, would have been not to land into any unforeseen argument, because he always knows that it's a two-wheeler's fault. But then, not just a road rage, it could even escalate into something more dangerous. And so probably I think the car guy there was a good Samaritan, and he just left the scene. And probably it was too late for the two-wheeler guy to even respond further and try to show off his competencies when it was not required.
Okay, you made an assumption here
Yes.
that the two-wheeler guy was speeding.
Yes.
Now, when I gave you the second level of information, you got into one more assumption that the two-wheeler guy was speeding,
Yes.
and he was the one who couldn't control the bike,
Yes.
and he went and banged the car,
Yes.
which was correct actually. Your assumption is correct in this time. But supposing both are not overspeeding, and still the two-wheeler guy was the one who gone and hit the car, then who would you hold responsible?
Then, of course, if both were not overspeeding, then it's really tough to hold any one of them responsible because.
No, sir, there is a provision in law. I'll explain to you what it is.
Right.
See, two-wheeler guy is coming from west to east.
Right.
Car guy is coming from south to north.
Right.
That means the car is technically on the right hand side of the two-wheeler guy.
Right.
And our motor law says that always give priority to the right hand side traffic. That means the two-wheeler guy should have stopped and let the car pass, and then only you should have moved.
Okay.
So now you tell me, with this much information, what do you think now?
I mean, I'm really thankful to you for sharing this information because I would like to confess because I have never followed that information myself.
No, but this is a part of your license, testing.
No, I know.
Anyway,
I know.
That's 30 years old, so you.
No, I confess because I have not followed this. So that's the reason why it was very difficult for me to hold anyone responsible in this scenario which you are describing.
Okay.
So I think, giving the right of the way and all those things is never really followed in this country. So that all again goes to the western side. So keeping that in mind, I would still say that the two-wheeler would be responsible. Keeping that in mind, yes.
So now I am going to expose the third level of detail to you.
Yeah.
Not only the two-wheeler guy was speeding,
Yeah.
because the roads were empty. It was locked down. You were not expecting.
Right.
So he was speeding much higher than he was like 40 kilometers per hour.
Right.
It's not actually technically overspeeding in terms of city limits, because I think within city the limit is 30. For 60. I don't know. I think ring road is 60, airport road is 80, and within city it is 30. So maybe 10 kilometers more than whatever. But more importantly, he was talking on his cell phone through his headset. He had put a headset, connected it to his mobile phone, and he was talking to someone as he was riding. So he was not only above speed limit, he was also talking on the mobile phone, but not with hands-free.
Right.
And then he came and banged the car guy. He couldn't apply, the brake.
The brake and
on time. He lost control basically, and he banged the car guy.
Right.
So now, what's your?
Simple. It's the two-wheeler's responsibility.
Okay.
Because it says, and I mean, like your own common sense should tell you that you are not supposed to ride with a mobile phone on. I mean, even if you are having a hands-free or anything, anytime you can get deviated, and you would not have a consistent focus on one particular object. So, I mean, according to me, like if you really have anything very important to speak or something, you can always pull up on the road, finish with your call, and then you can continue your driving. But driving with a mobile phone or anything is definitely dangerous, and in this instance, I would definitely purely hold the bike guy responsible.
Okay. I'm developing I'm going your description further to you. What
Right.
happened because
Right.
the car guy slowed down and then he got alerted and somehow he sped away. He was alone in the car. He didn't have anybody else. He was alone in the car. Two-wheeler guy was also alone. He didn't have any pillion. So at the moment of collision, the whole place was empty.
Right.
But within about 4-5 minutes, about 6 to 7 people had gathered there. Within 3-4 minutes.
Right.
I don't know from where they came,
Right.
although it was locked down.
Right.
But they were gathered there.
Right.
Out of that, one set was one actually was a scooter passing by.
Okay.
A couple of guys passing by in a scooter. They also stopped to find out what happened.
Right.
Then then what happened? They said the car guy was involved and he sped away, right?
Right.
So there was consensus reached between that collection of people there
Okay.
to chase the car guy. So the scooter guys, they started chasing the car guy, but I don't know whether they could
Hold him back.
because
Hold him
he had
off.
already taken 2-3 turns and he had disappeared, I think.
Right.
So I think they failed in pursuing that guy.
Right.
But nevertheless, they pursued him. They
Right.
tried to pursue that guy.
Right.
Okay. So this is the total, sum total of the entire incident, what I witnessed and I described to you.
Right.
See, my question is, why is it that people in India and specifically in the cities or wherever in India, they think the car guy is always at fault? Why is it? Why is his mindset? Why do you think is his mindset?
Well, it again, the problem is, as you described, the number of people who gathered together and they were trying to influence the man
Yeah,
to
the 4-5
follow them.
guys assembled there.
Yeah,
They had
follow
already declared the car guy as the culprit.
Yes,
Okay, the criminal.
yes.
How can this kind of behavior how is it acceptable?
Yeah, no, this is definitely,
Just because he's in a car, how can you try, by default, hold him accountable and try to
no,
prosecute
the
him?
difference is, as I said a little bit earlier, even if a cycle hits a auto or something like that and a cycle man is held responsible, the auto man is not much held responsible. But in this case, it's a car and a two-wheeler. But what I would like to stress on the fact here is that, 4 or 5 people gathering could be for various reasons. Here normally what happens is there are many passers-by who don't have any job on hand at all, but just want to make their presence felt whenever such a thing happens. So more than trying to, really try to assess the situation perfectly and try to find out what has happened, they just try to give their suggestions in whether it is warranted or not. And it also remains a question mark as to what type of people are really there at that point of time. Really, you have some educated people who can use their experience and suggest the person what to do. And I'm sure educated people wouldn't really ask him to follow the car or anything like that. They would have more tried to, if it really warranted to go and give a complaint at the police station or something, they would have tried to take that step much after assessing what is wrong. In this case in this particular case, the type of people who would have assembled there would have been, some goons or mafia or something like that, who would like to, who would have wanted to try to take disadvantage of that position, try to influence the scooter guy. And, generally...
See, what happened is a collision happened. Two-wheeler guy fell. Car guy sped away.
Right.
Another two-wheeler, a couple of guys coming in two-wheeler stopped by to check what happened.
Right.
They only came to know the car guy sped.
Right.
They were not witness of the fact that the bike was the one which hit the car. They didn't know that. They
Right.
only saw the bike guy on the road.
Right.
So they made an assumption that the car guy was hit and run.
Right.
So they tried to chase the car.
Right.
See, my question is, those guys were also not wearing helmet or they were not law abiding.
Right.
whatever.
Right. Right.
See, suppose you are the two-wheeler guy.
Right.
In this example,
Yeah.
how would you have behaved? Suppose you are the one who went and crashed.
Oh, I
How
would.
do you-
No, I would. I mean, definitely. In this scenario, I wouldn't have reacted immediately, and I wouldn't have lost my cool and tried to shout at that man or anything like that. Because I would have tried to trying to find out what the other person's reaction was. I would have reacted in that way. Generally, the reason why I feel that the car guy would have been held responsible is very fair and simple. Because a car is more luxurious a vehicle than a two-wheeler. So there is every opportunity to generate a false case and try to get maximum out of what can be achieved. So even though this I have seen this happening to many of the people, or if not directly seen, I've heard this happen. Because cars getting involved with collisions or some very costly vehicles getting involved with even say trucks or lorries or something like that, and the damages are always put on the person who is driving a car, because there is always an assumption it's a luxurious vehicle. Even today the car has become a necessity in life, but still owning a four-wheeler is considered luxurious by many people who would like to take disadvantage of certain situations. So I feel that holding someone responsible at the immediate instance can always be thought about for few seconds before really taking that forward. And holding any car guy responsible only for this reason, I don't see it as a right decision. The reason according to me is only this: try to take disadvantage of the situation and try to see how much you can get out of that.
And now suppose you were the guy in the car, sir. How would you have behaved?
Same thing as a two-wheeler. I wouldn't have sped off. I would have tried to stop. I would have tried to find out what has happened, and of course I would have tried to handle the situation diligently and tried to be a bit more organized earlier. But if it had come where I had to take some stringent action, but not physical combat or anything like that, I would have tried to take the legal course if it was.
Legal course means you call the cops.
Call the cops or lodge a complaint and try to put my case forward, take it forward from there.
So there is an overarching issue here, sir. In this whole incident, right? There is an overarching, there's a prima facie, violation of law by all parties involved. That is, it was curfew and you are not supposed to be out.
Okay, right. Yes.
So now, as I told you, I asked you what you will do as a car owner. You said you'll take legal course, call the cops. Would you call the cops when you have violated the law yourself, 144, section 144? How do you justify that? If the cops come and ask you, they may ask you, first thing they'll ask you is why were you out?
No, absolutely. What you say is correct. I shouldn't have violated it myself. But at that moment, to be very frank, I would not really think about whether I have violated or he or is violated or anything, which is a wrong thing to do. I would definitely agree that, because at that particular moment, my mind will not go to that direction, whether you have really violated a curfew or anything like that. Which, if I was in that case, yes. Whatever the penalties had to be borne, I would have definitely been a part of that, because I had also violated the rule. But to be very frank, I mean, our brain is not always in a stable state of mind. I mean, there are many things happening. So giving due look into that, probably I wouldn't have had time to even think about all those things. So, but yes, what you rightly say, I myself shouldn't have violated the rules. I agree to that.
Okay. So now I move on to the next topic, sir.
Yes.
Related topic, of course.
Yeah.
This is something which is hotly contested and it divides the house always.
Right.
So what are your thoughts about the auto rickshaws in Bangalore Road and the drivers? Do you think they are a curse or they are an eyesore, boon, bane?
Uh,
Are they good auto drivers, bad auto drivers? Most of them are good, most of them are bad. What's your experience so far? Bangalore auto
no, I
drivers.
have had a mixed experience with auto drivers because going back to say before coming to Bangalore when I was in Pune, I have seen the auto drivers there and I have seen the auto drivers here. There is a phenomenal comparison. I mean, you can't compare the drivers there from here because there I have seen instances where even at 2 o'clock in the night, people will ask you where you want to go, and if they automatically find you in distress, they will lend you a helping hand. But I have never really faced anything like that here, or even if I have seen anything like that happen, the percentage is very less. It is very marginal, very, very marginal. I have found drivers more on the unaccommodative and ruder side, but there have been some very good people also. In our own family circles, there is an excellent auto driver, and who is more of a family member to us than anything else, because he is a part and parcel of every visit which we take. So there are some good people also, but the percentage of people who are non-accommodative, rude, is a bit more than good people. Is how I would summarize.
But how do you judge their usage of the road, sir? Are they compliant, non-compliant, or do they ride as if the road belongs to their?
They do, because they are non-compliant. And first of all, about 80 to 90% of the people don't even bother to find out where you need to go. First of all, they would like to know whether you are ready to where they want to go. I mean, rather than, I have seen many people who behave negatively. Even I have seen senior citizens land into trouble, because irrespective of where they would like to go or something, these people just say, no, I'm not coming there. Because finally, their argument is that if you go one way, you will not get any passenger back or something. But I agree to that in one perspective. But, they are also serving the people and they are earning their bread out of it. But why don't they look it in this way, that an opportunity lost is lost. Suppose you serve a person when there is an absolute need. He might even, publicize your good behavior in the newspapers and everything, and you might stand in to become an important person, and people would also like to follow you and take your services whenever warranted. So that should be the brain behind that. But unfortunately, not much is being done by auto drivers themselves to behave in that manner. So I really wish they improve and they serve people more. And they should forget about saying that I'll not come to where you want to go and you should come to where I am going and all those things. That should not be the feeling which should be given to general public. This is what I feel.
So now, if you're given a choice between an Ola and an auto, which will you choose?
I would choose an Ola.
Okay.
Yes, because not only from the comfort point of view, because at least they are much more accommodative, and they do reciprocate in quick time, is what my experience has been with an Ola. And my preference for an auto would be the last. In the prevailing transport choices which you have, I would always prefer to take a train where it's possible, a metro, wherever the reach is. Coming next would be a bus, because buses, the frequency is good, and there is nothing, apart from some minor delays which might happen due to various reasons, otherwise they are good. Ola cabs, yes, Ola and Uber now, they are serving people very well, and autos need to really learn, because if they delay and if they continue this activity, then they might lose out big time in the years to come.
How about this yellow board cabs, sir? I think there was a statistic saying that there are more 45,000 cabs running in Bangalore before COVID. Do you think that's a bit too much, or how are they? Because since now 2 out of every 3 cars on the road is an yellow board. That was not the case some years back.
Yes.
So how do you think they have altered or changed the behavior of road usage?
Yes, I have travelled a couple of times in a yellow board cab, But I have found to my satisfaction that they have been good. In fact, they have not been as ruthless as they used to be earlier or anything like that. But due to the prevailing circumstances, I think they have also mellowed down. I think they have also been good so far, at least is by my experience. Whenever I have travelled with them or whenever I have chosen yellow boat with them.
Okay, our next topic, sir. So there are areas in Bangalore, see, because Bangalore rapidly expanded,
Right.
Several parts of today's Bangalore
Right.
were once upon a time villages.
Yes.
And those village people are still holding on to their assets.
Right.
And they still like to use their village area like the way they used to many
Earlier.
generations back.
Right. Right.
So a classic example is, let's say one guy who owns about 30 or 40 cows. See, let's say if you take that road, which links Sarjapur to road, the jail road is there, right?
Right.
From Sarjapur, when you go
Parapnagar
towards when you go towards Sarjapur,
Right.
if you take a right turn, there is one road which leads you to the jail, Parapnagar jail.
Hmm.
In that road, there are several villages which got converted to CM municipality now.
Right.
It came under Bangalore jurisdiction.
Okay.
But those villagers are not willing to change. They are not
Right.
willing to give up, or they want to live their own style. So in that road daily, in the evening, there is one guy who owns about 50 cows and some 50 buffaloes. He lets them graze in some place, and then they return home in the evening around 5:30, 6 types. They walk in the center of the main road. 50 of them, 100 or nearly 100 cattle. They walk 2 kilometer stretch. They walk and then they go into their sheds. Throughout this melee, you have no choice but to follow behind the cattle. You can't honk, you cannot, you cannot harm the cattle, you cannot beat it, touch it, nothing. Because they say that guy is a very, some powerful guy,
Influential
whatever.
fellow. Yeah. Right. Right. Huh.
So the question is, I mean, you may not see, staying in north of Bangalore is not much of a menace,
Right.
but several other parts,
Right.
these cattle which are in the road, that's a menace,
Yes.
is what they project.
Right.
And in this direction, BBMP had created a budget to basically procure something called a cow catcher.
Cow catcher, is it?
It's a lorry kind of thing,
Right.
which can be used to catch stray cattle and take it away.
Right. Right.
I think it didn't work out. They didn't go ahead with the plan. So because I think nobody gave the tender or bid for
many
that.
people
whatever
came
it is.
forward.
Didn't come forward. So somehow I know it's fizzled.
Right.
But what's your take on this cattle on the road? Is it a menace, or should we accommodate to it and try to be nice to the animals? What is your thoughts?
No, I strongly feel that cattle become a menace because they are not cared for after a certain period of time by their previous owners. Because the value of cows, I don't think the people still understand. Because I think you should really be even fortunate, and it's a blessing in disguise if you are anywhere near a cow, or if you own a cow. If you own a cow, nothing like that. But unfortunately, the selfish and vested interests of man in general, it brings him down to such an extent that after his interests are met, he just says, to hell with you. So, if a man says to another man, to hell with you, he can face consequences. But if he says it to the cattle, unfortunately, the cattle can't react. So he takes a disadvantage of that. And he just lets it go as if, it's none of his responsibility anymore. But yes, taking that forward, unfortunately, an isolated cattle always becomes a hindrance. So what I would say is that once you feel that you are done with the cattle or anything like that, even if you feel that it may no longer be of any use to you, but you can still try to work out a certain way, or there are even many innovative ways possible today, or you can think. There is no loss in thinking. Try to think how you can take the life of that cattle forward, which has served you for so many years. Probably you can try to donate the cattle to some institutions or some places who take care of that, rather than letting loose on the road, which becomes a hindrance to the road users also, and it becomes a sort of a threat to the cattle itself. So I always feel that people should be more organized in their thinking as far as cattle go, and even like as you described about cattle being not allowed to touch due to influence from the top side or anything like that. I mean that's a very wrong notion, because anyway, top man or bottom man or whatever it is, if there is a situation where it is causing a hindrance to people, I mean they always have a right to ask the person to just move it aside or something like that. So obviously I think there is nothing wrong in that, but much before that, the owners of the cattle should be having a forethought as to how they are going to organize the future life of the cattle, and make it equally secure. This is what I feel.
Okay, so next topic is related to jaywalking.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on jaywalking in Bangalore?
No, I think probably that is one scenario which is never going to change in Bangalore, because the rules, I feel in this city the rules are made to be broken. So probably I think unless people realize themselves what they need to do, and this jaywalking is also going to continue, and it can cause a deep distress to any number of people if you land into some collective trouble. So I think probably people again there should be more organized and try to follow certain ethics, so that they are also safe and the rest are also safe.
Okay, nice, sir. So what are closing thoughts for today?
Closing thoughts. One thing is, it was an extremely thought-provoking decision to take this topic, and it gave me an opportunity to voice out what I felt. I mean, this is just to enlighten people as to what actually is going on. And like me, there may be many people who would like to voice their thoughts, but they should also try to approach some forum where they can really be heard. And I mean, what action can be taken is left to the authorities. But at least if you are given a chance to voice your thoughts, it's a very good decision, and I thank you for that. और जाते जाते एक छोटी सी शायरी हम पेश करना चाहते हैं.
जरूर सर.
ना परवाह है हमें ज़माने से जो हमारे खिलाफ हो, ना परवाह है हमें ज़माने से जो हमारे खिलाफ हो, हम तो उसी रास्ते पे चलते जाएंगे जो सीधा और साफ हो.
अरे क्या बात है सर, वेरी कंप्लेंट शायरी. Thank you very much.
Thank
very
you
nice
so
to
much.
talk to you on this
Absolute
topic.
pleasure. Yes,
Keep it up.
and we look forward to many more such topics in the future.
Yes,
Thank
sure
you so
sir.
much.
Thank you.